All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're taking a tour of the most complex, most fascinating city on the planet. And no, I'm not talking about Tokyo or New York. We're going inside a single human cell. Think of it as a microscopic metropolis, where every single structure, every process is an absolute marvel of engineering. This is the city that keeps you alive.
So where do we even begin our tour? Well, let's start with an idea that completely turned biology on its head back in 1855. Before this guy, Rudolf Virchow, a lot of people actually believed that life could just, poof, appear out of nowhere. But Virchow came along and said, omnis cellulae a cellula. All cells come from other cells. It's a simple idea, but it was revolutionary. It established a fundamental law: life only comes from life. That one phrase wiped away centuries of myth and laid the groundwork for all of modern biology.
And from that one powerful idea, the cell theory was born. You can think of these as the basic laws of our cellular city. The rules are pretty straightforward. Everything alive is made of cells. The cell is the most basic building block of life. And yeah, all cells come from other cells. But it goes deeper. They also hold all the hereditary info, the DNA. They all share a similar chemical toolkit. And, crucially, the entire flow of energy that we call life happens right inside these tiny structures. So keep these rules in mind as we head deeper into the city. Okay, first stop. Every great city needs a command center, right? A city hall or a central government. Well, in the cell, that's the nucleus. This thing is like a high-security vault. It's surrounded by a double wall with these little guarded gates called nuclear pores. And these pores are super strict about who gets in and who gets out, because they are protecting the city's most precious possession, the master blueprint for the entire organism. Now hold on, because this is where it gets absolutely wild. Inside that tiny microscopic nucleus, there is about 1.8 meters. That's nearly 6 feet of DNA. That is literally taller than the average person. So how in the world does the cell solve this insane packaging problem? And this is how they do it. It is a masterclass in data compression. You see, the famous double helix strand is first wrapped around these little protein spools called histones. It's like thread on a bobbin. Then, those spools of DNA coil up even tighter, and then that fiber loops and folds over on itself again and again and again until it forms this incredibly dense, compact structure we can actually see under a microscope, a chromosome.
But here's the really clever part. The cell doesn't need to read all of that information at the same time, so it organizes its blueprints. The parts that are accessible and loosely packed are called euchromatin. You can think of those as the active blueprints sitting out on the city planner's desk, the ones being used right now. Then you have the tightly wound, inactive sections called heterochromatin. Those are the blueprints that have been archived, filed away because they're not needed at the moment. It's an incredibly efficient system.
All right, we've seen the government center. Now let's step outside the nucleus and into the cytoplasm. This is the city's bustling downtown, its industrial heartland. It's this jelly-like space just filled to the brim with all these specialized structures called organelles. And each one has a very specific job to do, from building things to generating power. So what's this number? 1 million. What do you think that could be? Well, that is the maximum number of power plants, mitochondria, that you can find in a single human egg cell. 1 million power plants. It's just a staggering amount of energy infrastructure, and it really shows you the monumental power it takes to create a new human life.
Mitochondria are just so cool. They pump out ATP, which is the cell's universal energy currency. It powers everything. But what's really wild is that they have their own separate DNA. It's probably a leftover from billions of years ago when they were their own independent bacteria. And get this, you inherit this special DNA only from your mother. Any mitochondria that come from the sperm are destroyed after fertilization. So your mitochondrial DNA is a direct, unbroken chain linking you to your mother, your grandmother, her mother, and so on back through time.
Okay, so what about the city's manufacturing and shipping department? That's where the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, comes in. It's this huge, sprawling network of membranes. The part called the rough ER is covered in little dots called ribosomes, and it's where most of the city's proteins are built. The smooth ER is where the fats and steroids get made. But once you make all this stuff, you gotta sort it and ship it, right? That's the job of the Golgi apparatus.
You can think of the Golgi as the city's main post office and distribution center. It's a simple 3-step process. First, it receives little bubbles or vesicles that are full of new proteins and fats from the ER. Step 2, it modifies them, folds them up just right, and slaps on a chemical shipping label that's kind of like a zip code. And finally, step 3, it packages them all up into new vesicles and sends them on their way to exactly where they need to go.
So we've seen the blueprints in the nucleus, and we've seen the factories out in the cytoplasm. So now it's time for the main event. We're going to see exactly how the city uses that master plan to build everything it needs. I mean, this is basically the central secret of life itself.
The first step is called transcription, and it makes perfect sense. You would never take the one and only master blueprint out of the city archives and risk it getting damaged, right? Of course not. You'd make a copy. And that's exactly what the cell does. Inside the nucleus, a little section of the DNA unwinds, and an enzyme comes in and makes a temporary portable copy of a gene. That copy is called messenger RNA, or mRNA. So what happens next? Well, that mRNA copy leaves the safety of the nucleus and heads out into the cytoplasm to find one of the city's construction sites, or as I like to call them, 3D printers. They're called ribosomes. And this is where translation happens. The ribosome clamps onto the mRNA strand and reads the code, 3 letters at a time, and it grabs the right amino acids and links them together in a chain, in that exact order. And just like that, you have a brand new, functioning protein, from blueprint to reality.
And the language that all of this is written in, it's beautiful in its simplicity. The entire code is written with an alphabet of just 4 chemical letters. And the rule is always, always the same. Adenine, or A, always pairs up with thymine, T, and guanine, G, always pairs up with cytosine, C. A with T, G with C. That's it. That simple 2-pair system is the foundation for the entire genetic code of every living thing we know of.
Okay, let's zoom back out for a minute, because all these tiny microscopic gears and levers, the DNA packaging, the energy production, the protein factories, none of this happens in a vacuum. It all has huge real-world consequences for our health, our development, and just the way our bodies work every single day. Here's a perfect real-world example. There's a process called the 1-carbon cycle. Think of it as the city's critical supply chain for maintenance materials. It provides these tiny chemical tags called methyl groups. These little tags can attach to the DNA and act like light switches, helping to turn certain genes on or off. Regulating genes this way is absolutely essential for healthy development, especially in an embryo. And this whole cycle depends on B vitamins like folate. This is exactly why getting enough folate is so critical during pregnancy. It's to keep the supply chain running smoothly. And you know, the power locked inside a single cell isn't just theory. There's an incredible true story. Back in 1951, doctors took a sample of cancer cells from a woman named Henrietta Lacks, and her cells did something no other human cells had ever done before. They just kept dividing in the lab. They were essentially immortal. This cell line, known as HeLa cells, became one of the most important tools in medical history. They helped develop the polio vaccine, they helped us map our genes, and they've been used to study countless diseases. The cells from one person literally changed the world. So the next time you have a quiet moment, just think about it. Right now, as we speak, there are trillions of these cellular cities inside you, all working together in perfect harmony to keep you alive. It's this intricate, coordinated, breathtakingly complex society that is, literally, you. And it just makes you wonder, if this is what we've figured out so far, what else are we going to discover when we learn how to look even closer?